Welcome back to the Business Roundtable Podcast. Once again, I'm your host, David Carr of Steward Your Business, bringing teams and people together to accomplish great things. We do that every week. We have another brand new guest here, John Martinka, who is here and is going to share some great insights about how do you exit a business with style, grace. He is the escape artist, and I'm super excited to have him here to bring different insights that I don't have, and I love having the conversations here on the Business Roundtable podcast so that you, the listener, can benefit from hearing about other business owners, leaders, and helping you show up and run your business effectively. And so, welcome to the podcast, John. Great to have you here.
Oh, glad to be here.
Yeah. You have written books, you have been on other podcasts, you and I have connected, and I feel like you have such an important message out there to help business owners really prepare themselves for a graceful, hopefully profitable exit without losing their legacy or their people in the process. And that's what we're going to unpack today. But before we get into the meat of that, John, I always like to invite guests to take us on a little journey of where they came from, why are they passionate about what they're doing, and why did you become the escape artist, if you will?
Well, let's take those in a little bit of a reverse order. So the escape
Please.
artist came from a mastermind group I was in a number of years ago, and we're there to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about what I do is helping people. If it's an individual, they're buying a business, they're escaping their job. If it's an owner and they're selling their company, they're escaping their business, and I say to the next great adventure in life. And it just the back and forth,
Yep.
and it just came up. You should be the escape artist.
There you go.
In 2014, uh, I got into this business. Whether you call it buying and selling or M&A, serendipity.
Hmm.
I was in a small Rotary club in Kirkland, Washington, where I live, and it was a brand new club. And I was encouraged to join by a manager at the time and my veterinarian, both at the same time. Says, "You got to join Rotary, and here's a new club, and you'll fit right in." And I can tie this to something later when we're talking about businesses and uh, things that make them valuable. I'm a young guy, and I get into Rotary Club, and most everyone in the club was a lot older than me, and
Mhm.
and they said, okay, we're going to raise some money, for our good works, and we're going to do an auction with another Rotary Club, and everyone has to go out and raise $1,000 of donations or more. And the naive young guy I was, I went out and raised over $1,000 of donations. Most of the old guys and gals they didn't. And they're sitting back there going, "Oh, okay, so we're going to do something. Look at this guy." Well, right away they said, "Get on the board." And a couple years later, I was president, and the guy who was president after, we hit it off pretty well. And a couple years after that, he said something to me along the lines of, "I've always thought you'd be good in this business." And the timing was right, as a lot of things in life. So I call it serendipity.
Mhm.
I I like it. I really like it because I don't have the attention span of an engineer that can work on the same section of a bridge for
Mhm.
a year at a time.
Mhm.
I bounce around from
Yep.
doing things like this, talking to you, to meeting with prospective clients or clients, looking at spreadsheets or writing or whatever it takes. Is it different segments of the day? No day
Yep.
is the same. No hour is the same, and that suits me very well. Plus, we're helping people with usually the biggest transaction or deal of their life.
Yeah.
You say you buy a house, but probably chances are if you got a good business, it's worth more than your house.
Yeah.
And
Hopefully.
yeah, and I say we because my daughter Jessica joined about 7 years ago, and it's been very rewarding and fun to have her working with me and learning a lot.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, and we're gonna get into a little bit of that too, about family businesses and whatnot, and what does that look like. Um, I love that it came from a place of John, you being part of the Rotary, great organization, and I find that I've been a part of other nonprofits as well, John, and I find that it draws a certain great caliber of people that want to help, that want to give back, and you got this experience and opportunity, and serendipitously, all these years later, here you are,
Yeah.
and you're continuing to help others in your business, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's the old saying, "Give to get," and I
Hmm.
find a lot of people that I work with and know are very much into giving back, at different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why it drew us here, and I love having folks like you on the podcast, John, because that's the whole foundation of the Business Roundtable podcast. We're giving, we're showing value. We want to help our listeners to find an advocate, somebody that they can learn and listen and take this on. And so to do that, we're going to dive into the specific discussion about exit strategies and why do we need to have them? What do we need to be thinking about as a business owner? I'm my steward your business is about going on 3 years here. What do I need to be considering where I'm at in the life cycle of the business? So I'd love to maybe we could start pull back where you have, John, maybe seen owners that maybe waited too long. They weren't taking a strategy. They weren't thinking about that. You don't have to name names, of course, but just, why are, what have you seen in people, not having an exit strategy? They're waiting too long. What have you seen there?
Well, first of all, what you talk about, David, is very common,
Mm.
and my analogy is a light switch, a dimmer switch,
Hmm.
and to m- not many owners get up and say, I want to sell in 3 years, so let's raise that dimmer switch up so the business is bright and shiny. When the buyers look at it, they're going to be impressed. They get up
Yes.
and go, honey, it's not been what it used to be. Flip the switch, get me out. And then we get into, the things that I like to talk about is some of the key factors that increase value. And if you don't have them there, you
Hmm.
are you are first of all, you mentioned, my book and it's exit with
Hmm.
style, grace, and more money.
Yes.
Obviously, the more money part, but you want to the style and grace means that the company will keep going, it will thrive because you are in a position to sell to a really good buyer.
Hmm.
The good buyers didn't look at it and say things like, the financials are a mess, or, there's going to be a lot of capital expenditures coming up, or yeah, they got 8 really key people and they're all over 60. So
Hmm.
you got to look at those things and take care of them, because it's not just making more money. If you have the systems, the processes, um, you have good equipment, you can just name the whole list. You're going to
Hmm.
sell for a higher multiple of earnings than someone who doesn't have that. And
Hmm.
one of the biggest things I see and advisors I talk to see, and it's just I think it's getting out there more and more, is when the owner is too much of the business.
Mm. Yep. Yeah.
We call it owner dependency. And
Hmm.
it's not just very small businesses. I about a year ago, I went to a professional group meeting, and it was discussion about one of the people on the panel was a partner, one of two owners in a business that had recently sold for $70 million. Okay, that's a lot of money. It's a big
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
doing about that in sales. He said during due diligence, he and his partner realized they were way too important to the day-to-day operations than they should have been.
Mm. Mhm.
And what that can manifest in a number of ways. And if you're selling to a professional buyer like they would to a private equity or family office,
Mhm.
what are you going to hear? Hey, we want you to stick around for X years. You're not
Yep.
getting out of here in 6 months.
Mhm. Yeah. No, that's so important. I mean, you and I have talked before we started recording the podcast. My passion is organizational health, the people, the team, and like you said, if you're not developing that team in you can't just do the switch, right? I can't just find great, amazing people and just plug them in right away. It takes time to integrate them, develop them, to understand the systems, like you said, the processes. And so as a business owner, what is your plan to do that in a like you said, in a graceful way. And I feel like, yeah, because I know where business owners can just get stuck in the day to day, and they're not sticking up their head and looking further ahead, like you said, John. And that I like that analogy of the dimmer switch. Like, how do we need to dial this up, or it can't just be up or down. That's tough.
Yeah, and with what you do, David, uh, you know, you're you got to get the owners to shed duties into
Hmm.
management. And it's not easy because especially if it's a founder who said, well, I'm the one who created this. I got this thing up to, I don't care if it's 5 million or 10 million or 20 million in sales or
Mhm.
whatever amount. They've done a good job. But it's a Marshall Goldsmith book, what got you here won't get you there.
Yes. Right.
Sometimes things have to be changed, and there are smart people around that you have they have to delegate to and trust them.
Mm.
And be the safety net, not the overlord.
Yeah. Well, and I see that too, John. I mean, particularly smaller businesses where it's just the owners, or I found this too, John, where they don't have redundancy. They have like key people, and if that person leaves, it's like a pillar. Like they know all the information. They're kind of holding it in. Sometimes it's not in a healthy thing because it's like, well, I want to have control here, and the business owners have allowed certain employees to almost take that control in an unhealthy way, and there's nobody else that understands the processes or systems, like you said, and again, it almost feels hostage to your
It
business.
can be,
Yeah.
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 Well, let's back up a little though,
Mm.
and, when the business is young and it's growing, yeah, the owner needs to do all those things.
Yep.
Let's not just say they can't just hire everyone right
Yeah,
away.
you
They
can't just
have to do
outsource it all. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
when you grow and you have the resources, it's not just about, "Hey, I'm going after every dime I can." It's I'm making a good living, we're growing, and I'm working less. I have
Yes.
more free time because, time is one thing we can't control. We can't
Yes.
make more of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and what's the saying? You don't wanna trade time, money for time. I mean, there's that you don't want that one to one, and so you have the option, I think, is where your accent where I hear, John, and hope people are encouraged as a business owner that you have the ability, this you can choose to work, not that you have to work. You come in and out of the business in a healthy way, like you said, to live the life and to create that space. And it gets to the kind of what the point where I wanna get, asked is how do we do this in a graceful way? And I love that term, how you said do this with style and grace. Obviously, we want to make more money, but how can we do that in a very thoughtful way? And I know there's different types of exits here to consider, but let's just unpack that a little bit, John. What have you seen? So if we can get this in place and work with you to get a strategy in place, how does that strategy show up and manifest itself when we exit with grace and style?
Well, it's doing the little things.
Mm.
The big things are out there, but it's doing the little things behind the scenes. And you talked before. I mentioned like systems and processes,
Mhm.
and when you have those, you're almost getting to a plug and play kind of thing.
Mhm.
If you think about good franchises, especially good franchises, they've got that business in a box that someone who maybe isn't an experienced manager or leader can have their own business.
Mhm.
And yeah, some of them are absentee. They're like a hobby business, and some of them, they work in the business as much as on the business. Uh, and others end up, with multiple territories, locations, and they have a real business. And you're trying to create that little bit of a franchise internally that, if Sue isn't here, Bob can do her job today because you've
Mhm.
got systems that are in place, and he's been, at least somewhat trained on it. Uh,
Mhm.
so that's a big part of it. You know, you deal with people.
Yep.
Uh, another key factor is, we talk about delegating, and who do you delegate to?
Yes.
Well, you want to be able to hire and retain good people, great people.
Mhm.
And this isn't, yeah, I will also say that goes to the advisors that businesses use. The CPA who just crunches out taxes does a good job taxes. They may not be the one to go for advice on growth and cash flow management like a
Yep.
CFO is.
Yep.
So it's internal and external. And when you talk about the key employees, and
Mhm.
they can be that pillar, they can be hold the business hostage. If we go back to my story about the Rotary and the auction, and here's the young guy excited, goes out and does it. Employees want career advancement. They want to do good.
Yes.
They want to
Yes.
help. Uh,
Mhm.
we're not talking about college kids working. They'll work 6 months and go get another job. We're talking about people, if that's their career and they're supporting their family, they want advancement. So the owner
Mhm.
who sits back and says, well, either I'm going to do it, but more likely says, I'm happy making the money we're making.
Mhm.
I don't want to do any more. I don't want to go into a new market, get a new piece of equipment, hire more, do marketing. I'm happy
Mhm.
with, that X dollars a year.
Right.
And the employee, you're going to get good employees are going to say, but we're not.
Right. Where's my yeah, I was in that place, John. You're bringing up a scenario where I was at a good company. I just didn't see my where's my future. I was there for 9 years. I didn't see where I just wasn't clear to me, like you said, and then you lose they're gonna go somewhere. They're gonna go somewhere, right? They
Yeah.
either can stay with you or they're gonna find somewhere else, and you've invested a lot of time and money, right? Getting them to where they are in the company, especially if
Yeah.
they've been there for years.
And if they stay, they may realize, hey, I don't have to be as productive as I could be because nothing else is going to happen.
Mhm. Right, the productivity starts to go down, they start to become more disengaged, and then you're like, "Why aren't we making as much money?" Or what's off here? That like you said, I think that's really important, John, that you're bringing up. Um, do the business owners have a plan for those folks? Um, and we're gonna get into a minute. I wanna talk about employee buyouts or around that, but do they have a plan so that they, know how to to transition? Are they thinking about those things? Or like you said, if employees and or like you mentioned, who's your outside team? Like you, John, do you have other consultants or people that are helping you along the way? Or are you just being isolated and just kind of, in an echo chamber? I think it's really important to find key advisors, those are coming alongside you, like yourself, John, or myself, where we are like looking at the company and helping them improve and work and make sure they're paying attention to these things. I could use the car analogy of like doing the maintenance, changing the oil, making sure the tires are working, looking at everything so that it keeps going, it's able to go the distance, or is it going to break down somewhere? you know,
Yeah.
and then you're like, it's really not worth very much, right? You're like, I don't really, but if you take care of it and maintain it, and you're doing like I think you said those little things make a big difference over the long haul.
Yeah. I had someone I knew. He was a president of one of the major divisions at Expedia, and he had a great line. He said, growth hides a lot of operational warts, and then you
Mm,
can go back and fix the warts.
mm,
And
mhm.
so when you want to grow, and then you can take care of those things, that the details like we were just talking about.
So yeah, so I've seen this firsthand where there's been some transitional challenges of when there has been a sale of a company, maybe there's been team confusion, they weren't understanding about the ownership changes, and I'd love to talk a little bit more about how as again, leading with grace and style here, you as a business owner, can you, prepare your team for that transition? Or, some of them may say, well, I'm interested. I want to buy the company. I'm in, how, how have you advised or company owners to look at that transition and with their team, with their people, John?
Well, first of all, it has to be the size of company that an individual or a couple few individuals can buy. Because
Mm,
if it gets to be larger, and they're just not going to be able to afford it.
mhm,
Banking rules change when you get out of the SBA loan guarantee program with the banks. So
mhm,
more down payment, shorter amortization period, things like that. Uh, so it just depends on the size of the business.
mhm,
Then it's just like any other buyer. Are they motivated? Because
mhm,
there's three things that really make a buy sell deal come together. You have to have motivated buyer and seller. And if the buyer's not motivated, and I've seen numerous cases, and in fact, I worked on a deal after this happened, where the owner went to the management team and said, "You want to buy me? Want to buy my
mhm,
company?" And they said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." And then they found out, wait, we got to sign a bank loan. We got to put up collateral, personal guarantees, uh, you know, you know, all of that, and changed the whole dynamic. So,
mm,
are they willing? not only are they motivated, but are they willing? And I said, there's three things that get to a deal: motivation, relationship, assume there's a good relationship with employees, and then
Mhm.
education. It's things like, yes, I am going to have to sign on a bank loan,
Yeah.
or to all buyers and sellers, I will be frustrated along the way. This is
Mhm.
not something like buying a car. I went online, I saw the price, I bought the car, and I got it the next day.
Mhm.
Because a lot of moving parts going on there. So
Yeah,
can it be done?
yeah.
Yes. I've worked on a succession plan about a year and a half ago.
Mhm.
Now this brings up another point. I talked about the employee age. Three owners. I'd known one of them for many years. And he says, "Come on in. It's my brother and I, and a, a third partner, all equal owners. Sit down. They're they're all at, we'll just say, a certain age that one would
Mhm.
associate with wanting to retire. And one of the first things they said was, oh, we all want to be out in 2 years. And my response right away was, that ain't going to happen.
Mm.
They
Mhm.
were all important to the day-to-day operation.
Mhm. Yep.
And we ended up, they had someone in mind, and this was a construction company,
Mhm.
and brought him in. We put in a plan for him to buy in. Started at 25%. I think it was 12 or 13 one year, 12 or 13 in the second year, and then he would own 25%. He
Uh-huh.
Initial payment, uh, he made plus some financing, and then it was his bonuses would go towards buying shares from
Yeah.
uh, and so it can be done, but they've got to
Mhm.
be willing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you see that a lot in construction
yep.
and some other industries. Well, law firms, often accounting firms.
I like what you brought up because that was brought up as far as like you said, putting the bonus if they're willing. So one company, and I love your feedback. Of the one company that I was working with, they wanted to be an employee owned company, and so basically what they did with John was like you said, are they willing? So they would give the option to just put take your bonus if you will directly, or put it in an escrow account for them essentially, so that when there's the opportunity to buy into the company, and so that basically was the indicator like, no, I'd rather just take the money. Well, then you're really not interested in being an owner. And that's fine. We just got to know your interest and where do you want to go here with us so that we can plan accordingly. And there's certain eligibility rules and things like that within the company that allows them to buy in. But I do think it's important that we don't assume just because they've been loyal and been part of the company doesn't necessarily mean they're, like you said, able or maybe even capable, quite honestly, to actually run the business in
Yeah,
that other capacity, considering all that, right?
yeah. That's what runs in when you run into ESOPs, which I don't want to get into
Yeah,
in an employee stock ownership. It's a
whole nother can of
RISA
worms.
controlled Department of Labor, but there has
Mhm,
to be a management team in place
mhm,
to do that. And what you're talking about, and uh, there are other ways to do it. It can just be bonuses. We just had a deal close, and the two key management people had phantom stock program. So they didn't own shares, but they
mhm,
owned the value of those shares
mhm,
when the company sold, and not before. So it wasn't like
mhm,
they're getting distribution. And this company did it the right way. And I've heard of companies, if they don't do it the right way, here's what happens. So in looking at the company's tax returns, it was an LLC, and you saw K1s for the owner, and you
mhm.
saw K1s for the two phantom shareholders, but it showed no share of profits. It said zero. So what that means is when the company sold, they got to pay capital gains.
Oh,
If they did not have a K1, if it was just like, yeah, here's an agreement, when I sell, you get 5%, it would be ordinary income, and tax
mm.
could be double or close to it.
So this is where, you're creating a team, John, and a plan. And I think, there's so many moving parts, like you said. You're not going to get out of this in 2 years. You got to think about all these elements. There's agreements, there's financials, there's other whole tons different things in there. You're talking about grooming the right internal leaders if they want to become, like you said, owners, and identifying them. How do we get them into transition? This all takes time, is what I'm hearing. You know, and
It can
they will.
if they're not doing it.
Hmm.
So, uh, also, we were talking about bonuses
Mm-hmm.
and money. Two things. One is, I think four. I don't know about the fifth one. Four of the last five deals we have worked on, the seller had set aside money for key people.
Mm.
From one of them told the employees, I've got a formula based on seniority and pay and all this, and 15% of his price went to in a escrow for them, payable at the end of 1 year, 2 years, and I think 3 years. So they stuck around.
Mm-hmm.
The other ones did something similar to one I talked about with the phantom shares. He also put a chunk of money in for the next level of management, about 5 or 6 people that they would share after the close. And so, the financial part is obviously important, which brings up one other thing that is with small businesses. I use the term all the time when people say, "What about this on the financial statements or that?" And I say it's small business accounting. It does not follow any rules. There's no gap.
Mm.
Generally accepted accounting principles.
Yep.
Nothing like that. Companies do it differently. They write things off differently. I've seen balance sheet items on the income statement. Uh, I just saw one statement with a company I referred on to someone to help them, and nowhere near ready to sell, and
Mm-hmm.
basically in a little bit of trouble. But they get customer deposits and they record it as a negative receivable, and
Oh my goodness.
it's just it's just stupid.
Yeah.
So one of the best things, top things any owner can do is make sure they've got good financial systems and accurate financial statements.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to be able to look at the facts, make sure yeah, it all makes sense. And like you said, depending on the business, model, what does that look like? Accrual, cash, all of these things. How is it showing up? I agree. Yeah, and I've worked in the environmental consulting space, John, for many years, and I know what can be considered, project related and what is, overhead. How are you classifying all these
Yeah,
things? Right? That's important. You have to have somebody to look at these things and give you honest feedback as to what the reality is, and really hold the mirror. Because I mean, I would be one. I'm curious, John. When I would assume most business owners think more highly than what their business is actually worth. I don't know the magnitude, but my guess would be most of them think it's worth much more, perhaps multiples than that, than when you look at it and you're saying, well, if I just looked at this today, this is what I think it would sell for. What's your gonna
yeah, I
experience
think
there?
you're right. They For many of them, and it goes both ways, because every
Mhm,
so often I hear someone say, my accountant said my business is worth the book value, which tell me the accountant doesn't know anything about buy sell, but
mhm.
yeah, they do. And I've had owners say, well, you can't apply the same multiples or metrics to my business because we're so special or different. And yeah, it's these things. These businesses sell in a pretty standard range. And I'll give you a quick story. It was a number of
Yeah.
years ago. It's a week of 4th of July, and I may be the only person working in the anywhere near where I am now. Yeah, I little hyperbole, but I get a call from an attorney, and he says I got a fraud case, and we got this company that supposedly makes $5 million a year. I and other attorneys have all kinds of consumer fraud case judgments against them, and uh, they sold big ticket items. I can't remember. It was like boats or RVs or this, and they were just breaking the law. And
Mm,
he says, but they sold it to like their CFO or a family member for like 350,000. So do a study. What would a company making 5 million sell for? A company selling for 350? What kind of profit would they probably have? And I did the report. It didn't, get all kinds of comparable deals. And it was a week of 4th of July. I got nothing to do. I start playing with the numbers in all these databases, and I come to the conclusion there are set ranges based on size of business. And we're not
mhm,
talking SaaS businesses because that's a whole nother world. But you
mhm.
take the business an individual's going to buy, and it's probably going to sell. Well, the stats all say 4 times EBITDA with a coefficient of variance was a little over 25%, meaning 3 to 5 times. You move up
Mhm.
away from that SBA loan range, yeah, it's going to be 4 to 6, and maybe at some places 5 to 7. It creeps
Mhm.
up, but you still have a standard range because one company may have, a dominant customer doing 57%.
Yep.
Your
Yep.
competitor has no customer over 3%. You know, you're going to get a higher multiple on that second one. We talk about
Mhm.
the employees. We talk about supplier concentration, landlord.
Mm.
All the things with leases.
Yep.
We went for brunch on Sunday, the last day of a restaurant in where we live. Uh, the owner's it's his second restaurant. He's getting out. He said the landlord raised his rent so much it did not justify keeping it
Yep.
going and all the
Yep.
effort that goes into it. It wasn't
Absolutely.
exist other restaurant. All those things come into play when you say, what's the business worth?
Mhm.
And then these days, uh, I call it the three I's. It's IP and IT are the first two. If you've got IP, you better protect it.
Mm.
I've got three
Mhm.
trademarks. You copyrights, most of them happen automatically when you put
Mhm.
something out there. But if you've got a patent, a product that you could get a patent on, it makes sense to get a patent.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
you trademark things. You you protect your IP.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I just got the other day. I got this phishing email. We have two companies. One my daughter owns half of, but the original one's Martinka Consulting. The guy says, "Someone wants Martinka Consulting. You better protect it. I can help you protect the name." But an IP attorney I know said, "You don't have to do that. That's your website. No one's gonna."
Yeah,
You
there's people that are being
it's
sneaky
your
about that, you're
business.
right. And to your
And then
point,
you got
yeah.
IT.
Yep.
Uh, you if we looked every day, every hour, we'd see some kind of thing about an IT problem somewhere, a
Mhm.
crash, a phishing,
Yep.
ransomware. You, you pay attention to your IT. I
Mhm.
I saw a company we were working with we lost a great buyer because this is a good story, David.
Mhm.
Their managed service provider, so overseeing all their tech for like 50 people,
Mhm.
got hacked. My client deals in sensitive information, financial information, bank account
Mhm.
numbers, social security numbers, things like that. MSP gets hacked. They get into his system, ransomware him,
Oh, no.
got out of the ransomware. But between that and he got about $500,000 of penalties from uh, federal government, California, Washington,
Oh my gosh.
etc. And
Wow.
because his MSP got hacked,
Yeah. And we kind of because they're not you're right, John. I mean, investing in these MSP or you mentioned IP too. I've had a number of attorneys on the podcast in recent episodes, John, and we were talking about how to protect yourself and doing the legal groundwork hopefully from the very beginning so that you're not getting sideways like you're saying, John, and having good reputable folks that are looking after you, that are being advocate for you, finding those good people. That's why we have the Business Roundtable podcast so you can experience and see and meet folks like yourself, John, knowing these things and helping guide people so that they avoid these pitfalls.
yeah, you're
You
right.
know.
So you have to have that. You got to take care of that stuff.
Mhm.
Uh, it's it's a combination of seeing the big picture and
Mm.
paying attention to the little stuff. Uh,
Yes.
so
So
it's
so important. We're getting close to the episode of the podcast here, John. So we're going to make sure that everybody gets access and links to you. You and I are connected on LinkedIn. We'll make sure links to your book, Exit with Style, Grace, and More Money. You want to check that out. But as we're wrapping up, just last thoughts that you want to share with listeners, key takeaway, or just something that you want to impart with them after we've covered a lot of ground. And I would love to have you back again on the podcast. But just final thoughts here as we're wrapping up.
yeah. I'm going to give you three things, and then I'm going to preface it with if anyone would like a free e-copy of the book,
Yes.
reach out by our website and just mention this podcast. We'll send them a free copy. But I want to close on a 3-point side to this. I hear people say, "Oh, 90% of businesses fail." I'm not doubting it. I'm going to say 90% or higher of good businesses do so, and that's because they're worth buying, and the seller controls the deal if it's a good business. Buyer controls it if it's a down in the dumps business. Tied to that, point number 2, most businesses don't sell because of distress, divorce, death, disability, etc. They sell because of retirement, burnout, outgrows the owner, the family situation, saying, I want to go see the grandkids and they're 2 states away. And then third, when you talk about people buying a business, buyers should not get buyer fever. And it's a lot of times it's individuals that just get enamored with a business. We have a company we're representing. We had a buying group come in, perfect set of buyers. They had industry knowledge, product knowledge, money. They'd run businesses before, and they decided they didn't want it. They said it's really not our sweet spot. It's on the periphery. But they were so excited. My daughter and I said afterwards, they just got buyer fever. They were so enamored. They went so fast. And they pushed back. So buyers can't get buyer fever and just go after something, because that can lead to regrets.
These are great takeaways, John. I so appreciate you coming here. Thank you for offering the book to our guests, as a guest to our listeners. We really appreciate that. It has been a blast really having you here and digging into this topic, much needed. And I think one that we definitely need to come back to again. This has been great. Thank you for joining us on the podcast, John.
Oh, I was glad to be here. This was a great discussion, David.
Thank you so much. Thanks everybody for listening in, being a part of the podcast. We of course love having you subscribe, leave comments. We'll make sure that John gets them as well, so he can respond to any questions you guys have. And please share, invite others to be listening. And if you want to be a guest, let me know too. We'd love to always have new guests like John here and having great conversations about helping you as a business owner and leader lead well. Thanks everybody for listening. Have a wonderful day.